This was an insane moment to witness live, and one of the happiest moments a Chargers fan could see. Keenan Allen finally breaking the Chargers' all-time receptions record, not only doing it in a big win over the Steelers, but doing it as Hall of Famer Antonio Gates was present, not only to see his record fall, but to see it broken by a young man who he mentored in his early years at San Diego. What's up, everyone? I'm Sam Peña, a Bolt fan in the Berg for Chargers Digest, where we talk about all things Lightning. That was a beautiful moment to see. Antonio Gates was one of my favorite players to watch when I was growing up, and then I got to see Gates pass the torch to Keenan Allen as the next great Chargers receiver, and Keenan has just been one of my favorite players to watch. When he came out of Cal, he was, a player who was a hometown kid. He was someone you wanted to root for right from the get-go. And he's put together a resume that could see him eventually ending up in the Hall of Fame. When the Chargers traded him last year, it felt like it was the end of an era. To see him come back to this team and lead them to this 7-3 record has been a joy to watch. Keenan is someone who was definitely at the end of his career, but proved yesterday and really has proved throughout this entire year that he still has a little bit of juice left and can be an impactful player. So we're going to talk a little bit about yesterday's game, how the Chargers were able to watch, and more importantly, what they can take away from that to be able to continue stacking up these good performances. So without further ado, let's talk about it. The first thing we have to talk about, obviously, is what I just mentioned. Keenan Allen establishing the Chargers' all-time receptions record. I know it came on kind of a goofy little pop pass at the end of the game, but make no mistake, that was actually a pretty important play because it set up a very short 2nd and 3 that the Chargers would later convert to essentially put the game away against the Steelers. It was that last drive that the Chargers needed really to kind of put to rest any sort of hopes for a Steelers comeback with about 5.5 minutes left in the game. I think the Chargers are proving that they're a team that can develop new game plans to be able to beat whatever opponent is in front of them, which is something that they desperately need with the offensive line in the condition that it is right now. Going into this game, though, I needed to see a defensive turnaround from the Bolts, or at least a continuation of the defensive turnaround, because there was that 3-week stretch there where things were pretty ugly for the Chargers. They seemed to be getting beaten to the edge on almost every single play, but in the 3 games since, they currently have 12 sacks, 4 turnovers, and have only allowed 6 third down conversions. All of those are the best marks in the league right now. And granted, it's been against the Vikings, the Titans, and the Steelers. Not exactly powerhouses offensively, but these are teams that can score in spurts, and the Chargers were able to limit any sort of damage that the teams attempted to put out there against them. So it's been a positive development for the Chargers seeing this growth defensively. Daniel Popper himself pointed it out. During that 3-week stretch between weeks 5 to 7, the Chargers were 32nd in EPA per play defensively. But in the next 3 weeks, 8 to 10, the Chargers have been first, literally going from worst to first. Part of that has been the team's gotten healthier. Obviously, getting Khalil Mack has definitely been a big boost for this team. But also, we started to see a pretty strong play from the interior of this defensive line as well. Daniel Popper has shouted out the Chargers' ability to have stronger fronts so far this season, and he mentioned that this is something that he feels like the team has to continue to see if they want to keep stacking those wins. As he put it, rock bottom is now in the rear view, and the Chargers will need this version of their defense to make something of this season. That's crucially important because the offense probably isn't going to be incredibly strong the rest of the year, even with Justin Herbert. This is just an offensive line that's in shambles. I think the Chargers know that, and I think you could feel that in the locker room. Deion Henley said, "We're finding a rhythm right now, and that's what you see out there. A team that didn't like what we did before the Vikings game, and we know that we're better than that." Deion himself has been a crucial part of that turnaround for the Chargers as he's put together a couple of his best performances in the weeks since. But really, when we're talking about this Chargers team and their turnaround, it comes down to their ability to generate pressures on the opposing quarterback, and a big part of that has been the return of Deshaun Hand, the interior defensive tackle. He was one of those cheaper free agent signings that was made this year by Joe Hortiz, and he's shown that he can get success out of those interior defensive linemen who teams have kind of forgotten about. Last year, you look at Peña Ford, he was someone who was kind of left for dead out in Seattle. Then the Chargers signed him, and all of a sudden, Peña Ford was one of the 5 best defensive interior linemen out there. He goes to the Rams, continues that good play. Now the Chargers this offseason went out there, they brought in Deshaun Hand, and he's been excellent this season as well. Last night, he actually led the team in pressures against the Steelers with 4, and he also had a quarterback hit. He wasn't the only player who was doing work on the defensive line. Teair Tart, who went out partway through the game, also had 2 pressures. Justin Herbert had a pressure and a quarterback hit, and Damari Caldwell, the young rookie out of the 3rd round, he also had a quarterback pressure as well. Overall, this team is just getting a lot more success at getting after the quarterback, and when the interior of the defensive line plays strong for the Chargers, it feels like they can shut down any opposing defense. I mentioned that Hand has been a huge presence for the Chargers from a pass rusher perspective, but also from a run defense perspective as well. According to the Thunder Down podcast, the Chargers' run defense with and without Hand has been a stark difference. With Deshaun Hand, they're giving up 68 carries for 274 rush yards for 4.03 yards per carry. That's not a great number. You don't want to see running backs averaging a 4 or more per carry, but without Deshaun Hand, it's a completely different story. Since he got hurt in that Commanders game, teams had 89 carries for 509 rush yards for 5.72 yards per carry. That means that Deshaun Hand is worth almost 2 yards per carry on each snap that he plays. He's someone who was consistently able to create a little bit of that interior push to be able to create some of those negative or run-stuffing opportunities for the Chargers. And really, when we're talking about a Jesse Minter defense, this is very important because he likes to play a lot more coverage with his defensive system, which means that he's going to have lighter boxes. If you play lighter boxes, you better have some good play up front from your interior. And yesterday, and really since the return of Deshaun Hand, the Chargers have been getting that out of their defensive line between him, Teair Tart, and Ebiogbe. If they want to continue this high-level play, they're going to have to get more out of them, though, as the season goes on. Because, trust me, we don't want a repeat of what happened against the Colts. They scored 38 points against the Chargers, and it was just a disastrous performance overall. Hand obviously didn't play in that game, but even if he did play, I feel like the Chargers were still going to have some problems dealing with the Colts' offensive line. But moving on to the offensive side of the game for the Chargers, I think there were some encouraging signs of life. I mentioned that I thought Greg Roman really adapted to this game very well. He didn't decide to go out there and throw the football 50 times this game. He actually decided to commit to the running game and commit to the short passing game, and it led to pretty strong results for the team overall. When you look at this game going into it, the Steelers were probably the worst matchup the Chargers could have, actually. They had 27 sacks, which was 3rd most in the league, and 66 quarterback hits. That was 2nd in the league. They had those high numbers even though they had missed a game because of the bye week already. If they didn't have the bye week, they probably would be 1st or 2nd in both of those categories. So the Steelers were a team that it was going to be difficult for the Chargers to play against, but they did have one potential Achilles heel, which had been holding them back this season, and that was their ability to get off the field on 3rd down. On 3rd and 7 plus especially, they were allowing a first down 40% of the time. And that was where I saw the Chargers potentially having a path to victory. If they could get that quick passing game going, could they convert those 3rd down opportunities? Well, what did the numbers say? It was pretty encouraging overall for the Chargers. When you take a look at their 3rd down percentage, they were able to convert 35% of their 3rd downs, 6 down to 17. On the flip side, the Steelers were only able to convert 18% of their 3rd downs. That was a big difference in this game because it was a defensive struggle most of the way through, but the Chargers made just a few extra plays on 3rd down to be able to put themselves in a scoring position, and that's what eventually led to this game being pretty much a blowout. Then when you take a look at the rushing attack for the Chargers, they had 115 yards on the ground, and they averaged 1.3 yards before contact. That's something that's very big for this Chargers offensive line because going into this game, they actually averaged a negative when it came to yards before contact. Being on the positive side of that was crucial for them being able to win, and part of that was because of the new crisscross motion that Greg Roman has been installing into this rushing attack, using wide receivers like Trey Harris to be able to block inside outside. That has allowed the Chargers to be able to spring a few of those runs. We saw Kamani Vidal. Yes, he was getting stuffed sometimes. Yes, he was getting tackled for negatives sometimes. But he also had several plays of 8+ yards on the ground, which put the Chargers ahead of the chains and made those third down conversions a lot easier for the team to convert. Now, moving forward, do I expect there to be a top-tier rushing offense for the Chargers? No. But I do think we're seeing Roman adjusting to what teams are throwing at him and being able to eke out small advantages in a position where they don't have an advantage, which is their offensive line play. We've talked all season about the struggles this Chargers offensive line is having, but it's encouraging to see Roman being able to adjust and create just little extra tenths of a second for his MVP quarterback right now to have a chance to win these games. Coming up in the next few games on the schedule, the Chargers are going to be facing teams that, while they do have strong defensive lines, have some liabilities when it comes to their coverages on the back end. I think if Roman is able to keep on finding those little tenths of a second, I think the Chargers can beat any of these teams. And with 10 wins looking like it's going to be able to get you into the playoffs this season in the AFC, I think this is a doable quest for the Chargers. There might be just a little bit of a pulse for this team. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Sam Peña with Chargers Digest. I would really appreciate if you guys could like and subscribe. We're trying to build this channel here from the ground up. And as always, Bolt Nation, remember, bolt up.